In today's video, we're looking at the latest trade talk around the NHL. We have some updates on the Ottawa Senators, the Vancouver Canucks, and does it make any sense to see Tampa and Toronto involved in a blockbuster deal with players on expiring contracts? We'll discuss that possibility. Plus, we have a trade earlier today. Lots of big news on the waiver wire. Lots more roster cuts as well. Another signing of a prospect in Vancouver and some injury updates as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, it's been an extremely busy day in the NHL. We had a trade earlier, all kinds of players on waivers. Teams are kind of getting ready for the regular season. The preseason's over. Rosters have to be submitted by 5 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow, and along with being cap compliant. So certainly lots of activity today. We're probably going to see some more juggling tomorrow. We could see some waiver claims. We could see some more players either demoted who don't meet waivers. We could even see a trade or two. Wouldn't be shocking as teams kind of shuffle things around, trying to get everything in order to be compliant for the cutoff here coming up in less than 24 hours. So earlier today, in case you missed it, there is a video on the channel. I will link it in the YouTube cards, but just to quickly recap, we had a trade with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Vancouver Canucks. The Maple Leafs trading bottom six forward Sam Lafferty to the Vancouver Canucks for a 2024 fifth round selection. Lafferty was making $1.15 million. He's only signed for this year, and then he'll be a UFA. Of course, the Canucks management team with Rutherford and Alvin, very familiar with Lafferty. They had him for a while in Pittsburgh, and we do know they have an affinity here for bringing in players that they've had before that they're familiar with. It seems to be a common trend there. So no big surprise. He does make the Canucks, I think, better, stronger in the bottom six. Brings a good speed, penalty kill, ability to play a little bit physical. So I think he's a good fit there. And I think that a decent pickup as well. It also allows them to kind of maximize their cap space. It allows Toronto to get out of some flexibility. I mean, Toronto's got a bunch of players vying for a few spots there, and it wasn't quite clear. And we won't probably know for sure until tomorrow. Looks like the Leafs are keeping Fraser Minton. They still have Easton Cowan as well. And they have a guy like Noah McGregor who they're rumored to want to sign, but they might wait until after Monday to do that. So either way, just kind of lots of like moving parts and juggling here to be compliant. On the waiver wire, there was, I think it was 45 or 46 players in total. As I mentioned the last couple of days, I expected today to be the biggest and busiest day on waivers. There were no claims from yesterday. We saw players that were waiver pickups in the last few days back on waivers again. So teams are already changing their mind here, or they want to get them to their minor league team and not have them on their NHL roster. And that includes Grigory Denisenko in Vegas. He was just picked up just in the last day from Vegas, from Florida. Now they have him on waivers again. I assume they want to get him on their, keep him in their organization, but would prefer to get him to the minors. So he'll have to clear. He probably will in that case, considering how many teams passed on him the first time through. And then, of course, Lassie Thompson, who was picked up from Ottawa to Anaheim. He's played a preseason game, didn't look good, made a really big mistake. I know that led to a goal, which unfortunately made some highlight reels for the wrong reasons. And he's back on waivers. So teams that lost these players do have the ability to reclaim and send them directly to the minors if they're the only team that puts a claim in. So we will see what happens with those guys tomorrow. They could end up back to where they were, and we'll go from there. Lots of other names on the waiver wire, including some goalies, which we expect one or two of these guys to get picked. But some prominent names to stick out include Martin Jones with the Leafs, Magnus Hellberg with Pittsburgh, Colin Delia, Alex Stalock, Malcolm Subban. And I think there's maybe another one as well, Prostov in Arizona. And then lots of experienced players too, including a guy like Zach Bogosian, Zach Aston Reese, who was just picked up. He was let go from his PTO in Carolina, signed in Detroit, but he needs waivers to go to their American League team. So, Aston Reese is a name. Colin White's another one. I went to a PTO in Pittsburgh, got a two-way deal, so he needs waivers to go. These are guys that could be picked up, of course, for nothing. Yoel Armia, another veteran in Montreal. Christian Wolanin in Vancouver. Jared Anderson-Dolan in L.A. Hinostroza in Pittsburgh. Stanika in Vancouver. Raphael Lavoie in Edmonton. Lots of interesting names. I would not be surprised tomorrow if we get multiple 2-3 waiver claims. It would not be shocking. There could even be more, but I think it'll probably be the busiest day on waivers, especially if guys like Thompson and Denisenko are reclaimed by their old teams. For example, they could be reclaimed just to go back down to their minor league team. I think Ottawa would be well pressed to get Thompson back and send him to Belleville, because I mean that's what they wanted to do in the first place. It's not like they wanted to lose him completely, just he didn't make the team, so he would make their Belleville team a little stronger. So we'll see if that happens. We also had some guys on PTOs get released today, and that includes Ottawa Senators releasing Josh Bailey and the Star Story releasing Jordy Benn. I know in the case of Bailey, some people were surprised because he did put up some decent point totals. I think he had a goal and 5 assists or something like that. But you got to remember, he was obviously, a lot of the games he played were against teams that didn't have their full lineups, so that plays a role. He was getting power play time, because when Bailey was getting all those points, a lot of that was not 5-on-5. It was when they had more of an AHL-based roster, and Bailey was getting a chance to try out. So he was obviously one of the few veterans on the team. It's just, it was not going to get the same opportunity. And secondly, Josh Bailey, you can tell he's still a really smart player. Has high hockey IQ. He knows what he's got to do. Defensively, he's okay. The pace, he just can't keep up with the pace. He was always a step behind, and like I said, you can tell he's smart, but the feet just can't keep up with the brain. And it's just one of those things that he's lost a step big time, and it might be the end for him. We'll see. But he did have a good showing. Maybe it'll lead to an opportunity elsewhere, but it just didn't make sense for Ottawa to keep him on board when they had some really good showings from other internal young options there, like Roby Harventi, for example. So it just, unfortunately, Bailey couldn't get signed, and then Jordy Benn was released in Dallas too. So end of the road for those guys, at least for the time being. We'll see what else may pop up for them. A couple of injury things to keep an eye on. Vancouver, they're going to be without Carson Soucy for at least a little bit to start the year. He's kind of considered week to week in that case. I know Zach McEwen in Ottawa was hurt in the last preseason game. Not quite clear if he's going to be available or not for the opening night. Wouldn't be shocking if he's not. He looked to me like he could have been dealing with a concussion, but the team has not explicitly said and confirmed an update on him just yet. We also had a prospect signing. The Vegas Golden Knights today announced a 3-year entry-level contract for a 2021 4th-round pick, Jacob Demek, who's a 6'4", 210-pound Slovakian winger. So obviously had himself a good showing, gets himself an entry-level contract. Now, as I mentioned, we have some different trade talk and scenarios to look at around the league. Like I said, some of this is going to be for the shorter term, some of it's for the longer term. Like, for example, we'll start in Vancouver. Some information from Sportsnet's Nick Kyprios saying, according to his sources, the Canucks want to make a trade to add a more true, legit partner for Quinn Hughes to be the top pair on the blue line. Now, I know they added Filip Hronek. Obviously, they added Soucy, Cole. Lots of options there, but I think it would be probably better served for the team if they all play a little bit lower in the lineup. We know Tyler Myers likely isn't going to be there long term. He's in the last year of his deal. He may be there for all or part of this year, but he's not likely going to be returning after that. According to Kyprios, the Canucks are looking to shed money in the forward group, which they could reallocate to this kind of position, and that they're more than before, at least, willing to retain some money. And the main trade chips we're looking at here is Connor Garland and Brock Besser. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, they'll probably want to start the season, see how these guys do. Clearly, they'll want to increase the players' value that they may want to part with. I know the Canucks are also really looking at getting into the playoffs this year. I do think they're really, their top priority right now is to have a better season for sure, but they also want to get an extension done for Elias Pettersson. And I think a big part of getting an extension done for Pettersson is to have a winning product. He needs to be able to see that the future is bright. They have a good plan. They have a good core group of players that they're going to continue to build around, some youth that's willing to step in and make an impact so that the future looks bright in Vancouver, so he has a legit chance to win. That's important to him, and he made it clear he wasn't really interested in signing until they kind of see all that. So I suspect we won't get an Elias Pettersson signing anytime soon. Maybe the second half of the year if things are going well. Maybe it's at the end of the year, near the trade deadline. It's hard to say. I don't think there's any chance they trade him, of course, unless he asks for it, which we don't expect to see coming. So at this point, getting your blue line in order, and obviously moving on from some salaries that are affecting your salary cap in a negative way would be great. So clearly one of those players that have been rumored to be on the move for some time. If they can retain some salary and get something done, it would be great. Same thing goes for Boeser, though. I mean, I know a lot of people, including Boeser, would like to make it work in Vancouver. It's fair to say he's overpaid right now because he hasn't lived up to the contract, but if we can get him closer to what he was in his early rookie year days, then perhaps, Boeser will be a mainstay with Vancouver. Maybe he'll re-sign for, a contract that works better after this one. It's hard to say exactly what happens. I'm not convinced that Boeser's going to be going out the door just yet. Even with some money retained, it's going to be tough to move. And if he's playing well and increases his value, that will help. But if he's playing well and scoring lots of goals and increasing his value, then they may not want to move him. But it does make sense for them to look for this type of defenseman. Hard to say exactly how they go about getting it. It might take more assets than they actually have right now to make something work. So we'll see. And of course, in Ottawa, lots of uncertainty. We saw them make some moves today. Obviously, they cut Josh Bailey. They demoted a few players, including Gannett and Schmeichel. I think we could probably see one or two of these guys recalled after. We don't know if McEwen's available for Wednesday night's opener or not. So there's some uncertainty there. Like some players that were demoted today were demoted for paper purposes, more about being cap compliant, and then they'll be recalled later because there could be other moving parts on their roster. We don't know about Josh Norris. We're getting mixed messages if he's going to be on LTIR or not. They need to get Shane Pinto into camp. Well, camp's over. They into the team here ASAP. And we either, to make that happen, need to see Josh Norris go on LTIR, or they need to make a trade. Seems to be mixed messages coming from the organization as far as Norris goes as well. We've heard a variety of stories. That's why I'm kind of skeptical on the whole thing myself, just because you don't really know what to believe at this point. Is this more of a play because of the cap situation that they're trying to get Pinto signed? Is this more of a play that they're being cautious with Norris, but too cautious? Can he go on LTIR if he's legit? Like, you have to prove that he's going to need to miss that much time. How can they do that exactly? I know we heard DJ Smith today say that he considers Norris to be day-to-day because he was asked if he's going to be going on LTIR, and he said that's a question more for Pierre, that as of right now he didn't think he would be because that's what he's classified as. But I'm like, okay, well, to be cap compliant and have any chance of signing Shane Pinto, you need to make a move then. So what's happening here, though? They didn't really move anybody on waivers that would be, really kind of shocking. For example, like they didn't. I thought they might waive a veteran like a Matthew Joseph, but DJ Smith even went out of his way to talk about how well of a camp Matthew Joseph had today. So I don't know if he's just pumping his tires. He did have a good camp. It's not like he's completely being bogus here, but at the same time, why he went out of his way to mention it, I just kind of made the whole thing just doesn't make sense right now. We haven't really heard that the things are getting closer with Pinto. A trade, really, I think for a long-term health of the cap situation in Ottawa, a trade needs to happen. They need to free up some money, and it's been a long time coming. They've had a long time to deal with this Pinto situation, and it's just hard to wrap your head around really what's taking so long. Pinto doesn't have that much leverage. He shouldn't be asking for the moon here. We've heard he's looking for around 2.5. And it seems like the Sens were in 2-1 or 2-2, like a few $100,000 apart. It's hard to imagine how they can't get this bridge gapped and just get it done. They're going to be awfully thin down the middle, and they're going to be risking putting their season at risk by starting with not good depth at center position. So we'll see. But I wouldn't be shocked in the least if we send in their trade before the rosters are set tomorrow, or we get word that Norris is going to LTIR and a Pinto signing. Something's got to give. Now, the more interesting topic tonight I want to take a look at is, could we see Toronto and Tampa hook up here on a trade, which I wouldn't have said before, but there's a Bleacher Report article on the future of Steven Stamkos and 5 different landing spots for him, and I've been kind of just looking at this and deciding, which of these options I thought made the most sense. And we'll talk about the 5 options, but I just thought the one that was most interesting would be Toronto, because each team has a player in a similar scenario. We have Steven Stamkos in Tampa, William Nylander in Toronto, both players on expiring contracts. Both players have expressed the desire to get an extension done with their existing teams. Both players are in situations where it appears as though in Nylander's camp, the Leafs just simply can't afford to go to the number he's looking for, which is rumored to be $10+ million. In the Stamkos situation, the team and the GM, Julian Breezeball, have made it clear they're reluctant to sign him right now and won't even look at it to the end of the year, given the fact of they have a complicated cap scenario. He's getting older, and they just wasn't sure. They said at the same time he's still very productive, and I think it sounds like they're kind of worried about that they don't want to pay him big money into his late 30s. So, both players are probably working on this and getting a little frustrated and realize that, they might have to move on. It's a possibility. Now, of course, part of Tampa's objection with extending Stamkos is his age. They made that abundantly clear. Well, Nylander is a fair bit younger. There's a big age gap there. I think it's 5-6 years difference. So, obviously, that's huge, right? So, clearly, they get a much younger winger. They might be more comfortable paying the bigger money. The other thing is maybe Nylander takes a pay cut to go to Tampa because of the tax differences. A lot of people will take less to play in the state of Florida and the other places around the NHL where there's no state tax because they get more take-home pay. So that might be a way to get his number down a little bit. They might be more willing to give a big money contract and figure out their tight cap situation with Nylander as opposed to Stamkos because of the age difference. Stamkos, obviously from Ontario. I know there was rumored when he was a free agent before he ultimately signed this current contract with Tampa that's about to expire, that the Leafs were in the mix. There was something about the Leaf offer, though, that he wasn't crazy about, which led him to want to stay in Tampa. We did hear that there was definitely talks with the Leafs. Stamkos did listen to them. They did make an offer. Doesn't sound like it got super close. And that's as far as we got. So we know Tampa ultimately got the deal done. Stamkos got what he wanted and stayed with the Lightning organization. But, the other thing with the Leafs, they only will have, at this point, Nylander's contract would come off the books, right? They would get older, obviously, getting Stamkos instead of Nylander. But Stamkos wouldn't be able to command the term and money that Nylander is. So they'd be able to get a player on a shorter term for less money. They'd only have one more year at that point of John Tavares. So it's hard to say if Tavares stays. And if he does, I'm sure he takes less money. So you might be able to get, you'd only have one more year of that contract. You have Matthews extended. You're going to try to extend Marner next. It might be a way for Stamkos to kind of complete a new look core. I mean, he brings Stanley Cups to the table here and a winning pedigree, former first overall pick. Maybe he's the guy that goes and helps Toronto get the job done. It's not to say that this makes absolutely, perfect sense for both teams, but I think there is an argument to be made that you have two players on expiring deals that may have to move, that are not getting what they want in their existing spots. As of today, at least, it's an interesting concept to take a look at. Now, the other concepts for Stamkos in this article involved Vegas, Boston, Carolina, and Colorado. Various trade scenarios were discussed. To me, this one, I think, kind of made the most sense. Boston, I don't think really has the assets to get a deal done. It mentioned, parting with Jake DeBrusk, probably a future first-round pick, maybe a prospect like Lowray or something like that. Carolina said they may have to part with a guy like Seth Jarvis, one of their defensemen who's going to be coming up that's not signed yet, so either Pesce or Shea, and maybe a prospect pick or something else in there. The Avalanche mentioned like maybe a defenseman like a Samuel Girard, and then of course probably a pick and a prospect, something of that nature. Vegas mentioned Chandler Stevenson, pick and a prospect, something of that nature. So some interesting ones, but to me, Stamkos for Nylander. And it goes on to mention some other options for the Leafs if they don't want to part with Nylander, or if they figure out a way to sign Nylander and try to squeeze this in as well. But they'd be trading away a lot of their youth. If it's not Nylander, it'd have to be a package of, you're looking at some kind of combination of Robertson, Nyes, Minton, one or two of those guys would be what it would take, along with maybe a pick or something, right? And that's not really going to help them, I don't think, longer term because they're going to be using a lot of their youth. The problem with the Leafs are not really an old team, but they are not like a young team. If you look at their average age compared to what they were a few years ago, the number keeps creeping up there. They've added a lot of aging veterans to the younger group of players, and even like Matthews, Marner, Nylander, they're not old by any means, but they're certainly not fresh out of the draft either. They're kind of in that middle range right now. So to me, they clearly are trying to surround these guys with experienced veterans who can win is what they're trying to do, and win with that core group of younger players. So, would Stamkos be that player? Would he be a better option than Nylander? And even if you don't think he's a better option, you got to understand that the concept here that, like I said, Nylander's younger, so the Lightning would be more interested in paying him the bigger money longer term than they would Stamkos. Stamkos gets a shorter term, still good money, but if they could give Stamkos a contract closer to what they would like to pay Nylander. So maybe Stamkos takes, if he's making 8.5 now, reasonable to think that he wouldn't really get much of a raise, that he might take a little less even on his next contract, considering he's going to be getting into the mid to late 30s with that deal. So, maybe he takes a 3 or 4 year deal at, 7.5, something along those lines. That would be a lot more feasible for the Leafs cap situation than like a 7 or 8 year deal times 10.5 that Nylander's looking for. So I personally think it's a very intriguing idea. Now, it's not something you normally see with division rivals, two teams who have battled in the playoffs as well, but it's certainly interesting to think about at the very least. Like I said, this is just an article, writer's opinion, that's something that could make sense. I thought it was very interesting. I wanted to talk about it and wanted your opinion. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Read the article. I'll link it in a pinned comment. And tell me if you think this trade makes sense. And if give me arguments from either side, why or why not they should do it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.